What is going on, people? Here we are, myself, Stish, and as always, my sparring partner in what is, I guess, like the festivities are done now, Quinny. But here we are, Quinny, Stish, back for episode number 80 of the End Product Podcast. We are closing in on the final 10 minutes now, Quinny, before the 90, and then time added on. How was the festive in a non so rare capacity first?
It was great, mate. Santa came by. We all had a good time. Presents were had. Kids had a good time. Had a wee bit of tequila, a few snowball fights, a wee bit of sledding and stuff like that. It was a magical Christmas, I must say. Storybook stuff. Yeah, I was ended up north Scotland for a few days, which was fun. And the weather was brutal. I don't know if you've seen, but there was a few games called off and whatever. And I was like in the middle of like the Highlands, getting snowed on everything else. So it was like Christmas Day, woke up and it was like just normal kind of minging Scottish weather. But then after like, I don't know, 1 o'clock, it was just snowing for like a day and a half solid. And it was just brilliant. It's just pure picturesque stuff, which was great. But coming home, like for anyone that knows Scotland, if you don't, feel free to check this out on a map, right? But essentially I was coming from like Aviemore, which is like the A9, the big roads, like that's the kind of general kind of area I was at. And to get back to Glasgow, you have to come down the A9 and come down the motorways and all the rest of it. But the A9 is like one of the deadliest roads in the world at the best of times. And it was like mad blizzard weather, so the road get closed. And anyway, the way I had to drive was round like all of Scotland, essentially, go round to Fort William and then down Ben Nevis, Glencoe, all that stuff, around the back of Loch Lomond, back into Glasgow. So it was like a cross-country tour of death, honestly. Me and the Quins were almost wiped off the face of the earth a couple of times yesterday. And none of you would have been even aware or anything like that. But honestly, like so many times, this close away from a truck wiping us out, or honestly, mate, never had anything like it in my life. And I've did a lot of, unfortunately, through no choice of my own, like treacherous driving, let's say, and like bits of trees were flying off the roads. There's ice and snow all over the place as well, and like trees were like full-on trees were on the road and like had to be cut away and stuff like that. And I'll tell one wee side tangent on this, and we'll get into it. We'll see what the live chat's giving it as well. But we had to come off the A9 and to go towards like Fort William, we had to take this little tiny road, and it was a little single-track farm road, but it's covered in like blizzard and ice and everything. And it's like downhill and then uphill and then downhill again. I didn't know that at the time, obviously. But anyway, come down the first big downhill, and it's a single track road with some passing places. And then when you get to the bottom of the hill, the road widens into a big bend, and then it goes into a single track road over a wee bridge, and then it's like up again into like kind of trees and whatever. And on that big wide bend, there was a huge sheet of ice on the back half of the bend. And then where the road narrowed right before the bridge, there was a brand new, pristine, still actually perfect nick, but on its side, Mercedes S-Class or something like that, like sideways. And then like the height of the car was below where the road was, if you get me. So it was like ditched, like off the side of a road kind of thing. And I wasn't there, but I can just imagine it's hit that sheet of ice and off it went. So that just put the fear of God into me. And then like for the whole drive, I was, the kids in the car and everything else, man. Oh, it was hell on earth. But we got across the highway to hell finally, and I made it home, which was all good crack. But
Wow,
it was a great time. But honestly, roller coaster of emotions in all ways, shapes, and forms. This past couple of 3 or 4 days for me. Great.
Did
to
you
be
have
back.
the Celtic tunes on in the car as well? The missus and the kids enjoy a bit of the Celtic songs.
No. Well, the kids, the kids are starting to sing along to one of them, and my wife is not too chuffed about that. So I need to, if anyone knows the Celtic Symphony, it's definitely not one you want your kids singing along to. So I need to watch that a little bit, to be honest with you. But no, we weren't listening. I can't get that kind of thing on in the car typically unless it's a short journey and I can hijack the Bluetooth for 10 minutes. But
yeah.
No, there's none of that going on. It was honestly, mate, like, no, you don't get good reception and stuff. So it was like lots of periods of silences and just talking and stuff. And you hear every bump and every and every crunch under the tire and every wee, and the wind as well. And you just feel every pull and push, and it's torture.
Sounds like the polar opposite to me. First time I've ever hosted at Christmas. So we had the family around mine. So Christmas Day, I did no travel. Boxing Day, we went to the other side of the family, which is pretty local. So I was polar opposite to yourself. Very little driving from Christmas Eve onwards until Boxing Day. And like I said, those journeys were nice and short. So yeah, it's good. Good few days. Busy, isn't it? I think when you got kids in that and lots of family, and what Christmas is not like the relaxing time that it's kind of pitched to you as, like, oh, some time to relax with the family. It's not relaxing. It's nice, but it's definitely not relaxing. But it was it was good. It's been a nice distraction actually from all the reward openings, because I've had absolutely zero end product through this festive season. Quinny, have you got anything to report on the card front, or any ETH, any thresholds, anything good coming?
So yeah, so I had the deadline show. It's kind of like the last thing we did before clocking off for Christmas and whatever. And right at the end, I kind of made some changes to the teams and whatever. No, was that the? Oh no. So sorry, I beg your pardon. Did the deadline show? That was all good. Everything was fine for the weekend. A wee bit unlucky with some of my scores, and I think I made one decision that went against me. I ended up pulling a tier 3 and a tier 4 super rare, and I finally won a super rare goalkeeper. I don't care that he's a DNP merchant. He's under 23. He plays for USG. Doesn't play, but after I win him, the USG keeper gets sent off, so I might get one match out of him now.
Oh, nice.
which is perfect timing. But I have needed a DNP keeper anyway, just to have a throwaway kickoff team once in a while or something, just to get a DNP keeper out. I don't have that at all. I've got 3 playing keepers, no DNP. And sometimes you want that just to, say, throw a team out especially in a midweek situation or something like that. Where anyway, so that was kind of cool. I'm not that excited about him outside of what I've just said there. But for a tier 3, I was like, okay, at least it's a keeper. And then the other guy I won, was it a tier? Was it 2 tier 3s, or was it maybe the goalkeeper was a tier 4? And I got a tier 3 for finishing 12th in All Star, and that was Arnaut Danjuma, who
nice.
I was a bit like, but seeing he's at Everton and stuff like that. But all I did was a quick Twitter search, as you do. And the first thing I seen was he's on loan at Everton, and the loan's going to get cancelled in January.
Oh, right.
And the first thing I thought was, oh, brilliant, he's going to go back to Tottenham and he'll play for Ange or something then, maybe, if he's bringing him back, maybe he fancies him. And it wasn't, I didn't really look into it too much. I won the rewards when I was away, dealing with kids and Christmas and everything. And it wasn't until like a day or two later, I was like, did Spurs actually sign him? And I looked into it, and he's still owned by Villarreal. So he's going to be going back to Villarreal in January to play some La Liga. And that's where Danjuma has been peak Danjuma. There's been championship for Bournemouth, if you look at his SO5 ratings, or
Decent.
Or if it was championship, in fact, but it was for Bournemouth and then Villarreal. So if I get Danjuma going to Villarreal in January, then for a forward super rare, that's a chunky tier 3 potentially.
Decent. Yeah, it's not too bad, is it? I think in the midst of all of the furore around DMP players and that, you've actually managed to pull a couple of potentially useful DMPs there. And to your point on having that DMP super rare keeper, I think it's really useful, especially for cap modes. Very often in these like weeks where I haven't got a lot of options, I've been able to chuck in a 3 or 4 man cap 240 and just hope it hits. And I've hit a few times with a non-playing goalkeeper. So long as they've got that L15 of 0, they can be quite useful in those cap modes. Because if they play one game and they've managed to hit a clean sheet or something, then they render themselves a bit useless. But it is quite handy having the L15 of 0, especially for cap 240. I think I'd be surprised how many lineups do scrape over the line and get the money, especially if you can line up with a few cards that have got a decent bonus. So something that's being trained up level 20s, like those 11-12% bonuses next to a non-scoring goalkeeper can add up pretty nicely. So yeah, I'd be quite happy with that. I managed to obviously I think I can't remember if this was the last podcast we did or it happened since, but I think we might have been the day we recorded. So I finished first, didn't I, in cap 240 super rare that week. Won tier 4 unique, my first unique rewards. And it was, I have to remind myself of the player. It wasn't someone I was particularly familiar with, but it was a playing centre back, plays at Rems, and is maybe not current, but definitely a recent Moroccan international. Let me go into my team and remind myself exactly of the player. But pretty good, unique. I'm not sure how much use it'll be of to me, because I was really hoping, again, I was kind of hoping maybe even a DMP unique goalkeeper would have been amazing, because I'm short a goalkeeper and a forward to do anything in the unique tier of competition. So I find myself now with, I think, 4 or 3 defender unique cards. He's a 35-year-old. He plays for Rems, Yunus Abdul Hamid. And yeah, Moroccan international. Didn't play in the last round of international fixtures. So remains to be seen if he'll go, whether or not he'll play in AFCON or not. But he scores very well for Rems, actually. He's capable, he's got some 90+ scores in him. So if you can put him into like an all-star, could be quite a useful unique to have, especially considering I didn't have to pay. So I was quite chuffed with that. Obviously got the threshold. And my first place win was Ivanusic of Feyenoord,
Yes.
24-year-old Croatia international. So that was the tier 2, I believe it was. So as far as tier 2 rewards go, that was decent. I was happy with that. And I also managed to scrape my way into the Cap 220 monthlies with that decent score. I did get a really decent score in 220 that week, and it didn't look like it was going to bring me in, but obviously it just about did once everything was rearranged. And so I did. I managed to win a rare and a super rare in those long format competitions, and the rare was a DMP because I think it was a tier 4 or 5. But as far as they go, I got Donny van der Beek, so he's off to Frankfurt, isn't he? I think that's deal done. So yeah, all around pretty happy with that. But yeah, since then, since the festive season began, nothing, no thresholds, no, a few coins, but nothing else. So fingers crossed, once the fixtures start up again, we'll be back in business. But yeah, all in,
Well,
some decent end product between us, Quinny. It sounds like.
yeah, I forgot all about the unique one. I think it must have literally been the night after we recorded, or the day
Yeah, I
after.
think it
You're right.
was.
We're also in a game week now, and this is kind of when I kind of thought I shot myself in the foot since we last spoke. But so I ended up swapping around at the last minute. I wasn't in the studio; I was away on Christmas. At the last minute, I swapped around my All-Star team from having John McGinn in it, like he played at the weekend, the team that finished 13th. I was just going to roll that same team out again. And I thought McGinn's good for a big score. Scored big against City, scored big against Arsenal, should score big against Man United. And I thought, I'll play Dyson Maeda. Celtic, have the full Celtic team playing Dundee. Should be a good game. I'll be away watching it. I just want to see the one team all kind of run and fight together and see how high it gets. And I made that decision right at the end. And then the subsequent result of that was like Cunha get taken out of All-Star Rare, or I can't remember how it all worked, but basically I'd totally, I should have been on for like winning All-Star Rare, All-Star Super Rare, sorry, with McGinn in midfield. And, I didn't have Cunha drafted in, but I was I was weighing him up, but it's Dundee. I was always going to play Kyogo, but Cunha did end up into D3, and he scored like 80 before multiplier, I think, or 70. So for a super rare forward, he would have been really powerful in a D. So anyway, I ended up moving things around, and I've really shot myself in the foot. I should hang on. I'm hopefully hanging on top 10 with the Celtic team. I'm in 8th at the moment with 2 games to go tonight. Arsenal, West Ham, and I forget who else. And then the D3 team that begins in is in 42nd. The prizes stop at 47. So I'm probably going to get pushed out the bubble on that. And I got a wee rare threshold with my DNP and Kunku getting a 30-pointer against Palace. So like a wee bit of like midweek end product to kind of top up on the Danjuma, the DNP keeper from the last. So I kind of think about them as one kind of little period, because it's like extra football over this period, isn't it? And I'm kind of all right with where I'm at, as long as I hold where I'm at. And hopefully the weekend, which we'll come to probably later on the podcast, like we keep the form going. But that even usage for you, mate, when I seen you won that, I thought that's an absolute peril of a card to go in with, like Veermans and O'Reillys and whatever, just totally, like tongue and groove with them, it feels like, But your unique guy, see the whole Moroccan international part of him, he feels like proper Saudi bait.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't looked at his contract, but he's a regular starter for Rems. Rems defensively probably haven't been as good this season in terms of keeping clean sheets. I know this because I've got Yavan Diouf rare, so I'm familiar with their sort of defensive output. And last season it had some real purple patches. This season not so many. But he has been putting up good scores regardless of the fact that he's not getting that extra 10, 12 points for the clean sheet once you factor in the goals conceded as well, all that kind of stuff. So I think the main problem I've got at the moment is similarly to yourself at the beginning, you was talking about just the lack of goalkeeper super rare options. At the moment, I've only got Gaetan Kook with fixtures, and that means for me, I have to choose like one division to use him in, and usually that's cap 240 super rare. So until maybe Asia or America starts back up again, my uniques are rendered a little bit useless at the minute, which is a shame. But to be fair, it's not the worst timing for that to be the case because, Levitt at Hibs hasn't been the scorer he was at Dundee United. Aimu Seko is very hot and cold at Grasshoppers and they go into their winter break. And who else do I have? Lehan Bombs obviously sat on the bench at Midtjylland. He's only come off the bench once so far. So yeah, I'm not knocking the door for like an entry for any of my uniques, especially in like a unique division. So for now, I think he'll be similarly to what you were saying with your goalkeeper. It might be like a throw together a throwaway team into kickoff and just see if you come lucky one week with maybe a DMP goalkeeper or a sub keeper that might get on. You never know. But yeah, I'll be keeping tabs on him. He was suspended for the last game they played. So yeah, I think he'll be a card that I'm following. I've got him listed in case someone comes and snaps him up, especially, for all we know, he might make the AFCON squad and they might announce some kind of special and people want to get a little Morocco stack going and there's your guy. Like, so if I can sell him, great. I think he might be more used to me in cash than he is as a unique card at the moment. So yeah, but nice to win one. My first unique I've won, so it's like another trophy in the cabinet. That one, little unique.
It's great. It's great for that, isn't it? Having a wee unique reward. I love that myself. So I'm a big fan of that. I don't know, but would it be worth your while maybe trying to trade him to like a Pavel or something for another unique that does help you positionally?
I could do.
Because, it does have some value. And let's say,
did,
I think he's great. I know he's not a superstar, but that division and that whole region are trying to get the national heroes that they can that are up for going there and becoming role models.
Yeah.
And a guy like him, who is like French Ligue 1 level, he's decent, isn't he? Like that just feels like a guy that a team could just buy. That won't cost them a lot of money and probably fits the remit of what they're doing. That's just my spidey senses, if you get me.
I think
just me saying he's not perfect anyway.
One thing that is good about him
is a bit better.
If you are a super rare, if you've got enough super rare lineups, but maybe you are a bit light on uniques, I think he is. His averages are pretty good, and he's more than capable of a high score. So if you are like quite a strong all-star super rare player, then he would be a good unique to use. Like his L5 is 60, his L15 is 57. And when you add that 50% bonus in super rare, that's like a very good score.
Yeah.
You're looking at 100 points. He's got two out of the last 5 games of 74 and 75. I can see another couple of 65s of 75. There's a 96 at the end of August, beginning of the season. So yeah, and then if you go to the sort of talking about Rems and their form towards the end of last season, that purple patch, I can see where they were hitting those clean sheets. He's hitting 78, 81, 77, 78, 99, 77. So if you've got that in an all-star super rare team, like he would definitely be, for me, if I had an all-star team, I think he'd be the best option I have now out of my uniques. He would be the one I would be looking to use. He'd be my go-to unique card in my gallery. So yeah, if you're a player who's got a little bit more variety in your gallery and makes more use of the unique, and like because of his age and I valued him based off what I'm seeing his sort of rares and supers go for. So I've just listed him at like 0.73 ETH, which, for a unique is pretty good. But I think, if that player was under 30, if that was a 29-year-old, that'd be an ETH and a half to 2 ETH probably. But yeah, I'll take 0.7 something for it. If I can get anywhere near that for it, I'll take it, just because I just don't think my gallery is where it needs to be to really utilize that card. So like you said, maybe it is something I go to a trader with and see if I can swap that for like a super or a couple of decent rares or something that might be a little bit more liquid as well. So where it might be hard to shift the 0.739 ETH unique because there's not as many buyers, maybe I chop that up into 4 really good rares that I might be able to get rid of 2 or 3 of and keep one for my own gallery. I think that's something that often, with anything above super rare, particularly, like some supers are easier to shift if you chop them up into 4 decent rares or 2 rares, if you're trying to move things on. And I mean, like I said, I'm not desperate to move this on. I've listed it in case someone wants it, but I think when goalkeepers come back for me, he'd probably be quite a useful card. So if I can get the money for him now, great. If I can't, he'll probably win me something down the line. So quite happy to sit on it if I don't get that kind of money back for it. Like I said, no rush to get rid of it. But yeah, I've had a few cards like that recently. Like you win them and you list them, but you're not really that bothered. So you just get constant offers, don't you? At the minute, I'm getting so many offers on things. I'm like, I've listed them for the sale price that I'm after. I'm not really that bothered if they sell or don't. I sold a few of my America cards because I just felt like I was a little bit weak in some positions in America recently. And I wanted to thin out the gallery a little bit. Just liquidate a few cards. And it made most sense for me to like look at my America and some of the cards. So I sold today my Nasang Ho soul card because he's moving to the J League, and I thought it's weird because his utility, or if anything, would be better if he goes into the J League and he plays every game. You get in that you're not going to have to deal with the issue of waiting for the scores to be updated like we do with K League. But I've just got this affinity to FC Seoul now, I think, and now he's moved. I'm like, yeah, he's not really my guy. No, he's in my collection, but I've lost Osmar to the Malaysian league. Nasang Ho's gone, so I've still got Kim Ju Sung and Palacevic there, holding down the fort for my Seoul gallery. But yeah, I let Nasang Ho go, and a few America cards. Probably not the smartest time to sell these cards in terms of like their market trend. Be better off waiting to get rid of some America cards maybe a month or two's time when we know, like we start seeing the fixtures come in and that kind of thing. But yeah, managed to let a few cards go. Nothing really exciting. Nothing that changes my gallery, so to speak. But I've got a lot of cards that just go unused at the moment, and definitely quite a few of those in my America kind of collection. But yeah, that's been my kind of like wheeling and dealing for Sorare over the festive period. I don't know about you, Quinny, but I've barely looked at the market through the festive season because I've been busy doing other stuff. But I wonder if this has been a good time to get in the auctions. I wonder if have you or anyone listening to this right now, have you noticed any auctions go particularly low? Anything that surprised you? Have you kept an eye on the market at all in the last week or so, through sort of Christmas, Boxing Day, all of that? I'll be interested to see if anyone snagged a real bargain out there.
Well, I think I had one because I thought, oh yeah, maybe there'd be some auctions that go a wee bit sneaky quiet. I think somebody messaged me that they got a good wee auction. I forget who it was. If it comes to me, I'll mention. But I had a wee nosy at the gallery and I seen that the jersey number Real Sociedad Zakarian rare was going on auction. And some of you guys might remember a big win I had earlier this season was winning a Kubo. So I have a Kubo in the gallery as a first owner on 40 points collection or whatever. And if I get first owner jersey mint on a Zakarian, or Zakarian, or whatever we want to call him, those 2 cards will get me 2%. No problem at all. Like, just the way the points work and everything, it'll be a wee bit over, but no one cares about that. And I have a Zakarian, so I ended up botting it up, and I shifted my Basil. I shifted to Basil my Zakarian and the rookie super rare I won, and a few other bits and bobs. Took some money out, got the Zakarian on auction, and I didn't think it went that bad for a jersey mint. It was right around kind of on the cheaper end of recent sales, I thought. And yeah, so he looks nicer. He's got an extra wee 2% bonus on him. Nice wee addition into the gallery. And then again, I was in that kind of festive spirit and everything. I thought, is there a wee guy I've been wrestling around? Oh, we should maybe buy him before he comes back or something like that. And I got and I needed a forward position filled. So I went and got forward card, Nabil Fekir for like 80 quid or something.
Nice.
Betis, I'm pretty sure. I've been in festive mode, but I'm 99% sure. Betis finished third in their group because Rangers beat them at the end. So Betis are in the Europa Conference League now for the remainder of the season. So they're taking a step down European-wise. So I've already got Roca, that plays in midfield as a super rare. And if Fakir's coming back into fitness, which we've seen him get into some squads before the break there, like, you know, for 80 quid, Nabil Fekir, I thought, yeah, we'll get him in. That'll be some good fun. So it's not really the auctions with him, but that was just a wee... There's a lot of guys, there's a lot of rare stash out there now, and the chat will definitely be able to attest to this, that really under 100 quid, depending on your risk appetite for guys coming back from an injury or your profile for success, you don't need the guy to hit 80 plus twice a month, 3 times a month or something like that. Under 100 quid can buy you a lot of cool stuff now, you know?
Oh, yeah, 100%. It's amazing how cheap some of the rares are. My brother was around for Christmas, and I've mentioned him on the podcast loads, but we talk about Sorare a lot now, and he's starting to move into res, and you know, I think he's starting to finally get the knack of Sorare data. So we'll talk about how he finds the players he does, and I've seen a couple of the cards that he's picked up, and he has picked up a couple of decent res for like 10 to 15 quid. And he's definitely putting himself in a position now where he's still without a rare goalkeeper, but even, you know, you can even pick rare goalkeepers up now for maybe 110, 120 quid. And we're talking starters here. They might be on that
Super cap it when it comes back in January.
He's been playing the 220, but I think it stung him a little bit, because I think one week he had such a good week that if he'd have played the team in all-star or cap mode, even with like a DMP keeper, he would have won a card. And he was like, oh, but he wasn't able to be consistent enough across 220 and rare. So yeah, and that might be worth talking about. I guess that, like, we know that 220 super cap is coming back. We kind of had that announcement, didn't we, just before Christmas. Now that we've had the fallout, we've had the rewards, we kind of know what came of the rewards in 220. Are you going to be playing cap 220 super cap, Quinny, or are you going to be deploying cards into, you know, strengthening lineups versus like actually looking at that as a solid option?
That's a great question, Stish. I'll answer that in 2 seconds. I just wanted to mention, just on what we were chatting about, there's a few wee comments in there. Connor Aspel saying that he got a rare Willian for €40, which was normally 70, and he got his full collection up to 750 points, the magic number. So well done, Connor. Merry Christmas to you. So there, Josh coming in, mentioning the Kimmich floor at 0.42. Ethereum is up a bit now, so if you're quoting it in ETH price, it's a little bit, you know, skewing it in favor of the conversation, but still valid all the same, of course. But I don't know, Stish, I felt 220 really burned me, the super cap, because every game week I put a big team in for, by hook or by crook, I managed to get a DNP almost every time. So I never get anywhere really near the prizes, and I really should have been. And I got a great 220 score the first weekend after. That's where I won one of my cards, I think. One of my thingies was like 220. I had a team that went off, and like the goalkeeper, maybe. I think I maybe won him out of 220 for the game week, you know, not for the monthly. So that was a wee bit annoying, because I thought, oh, wow, that score would have made a real difference, but 1 week too late. So I'm a little bit bitten by the fear that everyone had in the long-form competition of wasting good scores, because I put good players in there with good scores that ended up being in DNP teams all month, and I could have won more, you know, if I didn't play it. So I have been bitten by what the fear was, and I will be shy next time.
Yeah, I think similarly. Do you know what? I don't think I mentioned it, but the week that I won Cap 240 Super Rare, I did actually also come first in the Super Rare Cap 220 that way. I had a double first place in the last week. But obviously it was the end of Super Cap, so I didn't win a card for that. But that score did actually put me right at the bottom end of the tier 5 super rare winners. And it wasn't an awful card, to be honest. I think as far as tier 5s go, at the minute, you're kind of expecting a big DMP merchant. And I think I got a card that has been playing, maybe missed the last couple of games. Let's have a look. Remind myself. So he's not a big scorer, but he is he starts 3 out of 5 games, sort of that kind of player. He plays in the Turkish league for Hatay. His last auction went for like 50 quid. So he is a tier 5 level, but not the worst tier 5 you can win. He might be useful for a cap mode. Them kind of cards maybe will get deployed into the next cap 220 for me, but I think it will be a throwaway team for me every week. I won't be using a starting goalkeeper in that division. I don't think, given what I have at my disposal. I think it'd be better off deployed elsewhere and hoping to get lucky versus, having to do well 4 times out of the 7-8 weeks. Difficult, especially if you haven't got midweek, like lots of midweek options. And I'm sure if we look at the leaderboards, I haven't got them in front of me, but I would assume that most of the top prize winners were still like, the big galleries that have their throwaway teams are as good as anyone's, big teams. Been seeing like Pranksy popped up on my timeline the other day, and I think his gallery's worth like over $1 million at the moment. So
yeah, seen that.
You're playing against stuff like that. His throwaway teams are probably insane. But it'd be interesting, like Pranksy, whether it's a person or I think it might be an organization, right? I think it's multiple people sort of managing the gallery. Not the so rare gallery necessarily, but the NFT gallery or portfolio, whatever you call it. So I think it's interesting to see, how much the Pranksy account, whether it's a person or whatever, they seem to be one of the very vocally upbeat, positive about the experience. Obviously, that account is winning a lot, but when you can spend that sort of money, you'd be surprised if it didn't, right? There probably are a few accounts out there that are in the range of that kind of value that don't, right? When you think back to like the boom days of, who was that guy who went out and bought like 10 Mbappes or something? It's probably spent about
Bottlebor and Zima Blue, these were the big, the splash whales, the ones that really came in and shook the boat up, as it were.
Yeah. But they're still about in the leaderboards. You still see them quite a bit, don't you?
Oh, yeah. You would be mad not to be player teams if you were them. But in this whole kind of festive spirit corner, Aspel was saying he's been looking at MLS cards. They've been kind of bouncing back in price. Someone else mentioned that also. And the kind of seasonality of some of these cards does offer some good opportunities as well. But I was just thinking there on this whole kind of note that we're on in terms of like some of the value there. And I had a wee look through. I've just bought myself for the first time ever. I've got a rare Danny Parejo in the squad now. Because I was just thinking about that Dan Juma, if he goes to Villarreal, I was like, oh, how much is the Danny P? And also I've got a wee Valencia collection with 2% on it. So I just went and got one now. So Merry Christmas to me, wee Danny P. So yeah, I think like right now with a lot of the card valuations, like in terms of the rewards as well, because I know a lot of people are frustrated with the DNP rewards, as am I. I think they've made a critical error somehow in the new algorithm.
Yeah.
I think people are off, to be honest with you, like, and the people who are meant to be sorting it, because it feels longer. It feels like normally these things, it's an issue, they get nipped in the bud and they're dealt with quite quickly. But it does feel like the subpar DNP reward debacle has rumbled on a little bit more. And that makes me think maybe this is a little bit of, you need to kind of burn them into the reward pool and get a few of them out over a few weeks, maybe even this kind of festive period. And then they can kind of, like I say, burn that into the new system. And then it's a bit better, and it's just one of those ones where it's the only way to develop it, perhaps, or it's
Yeah.
one of the maybe it's unavoidable somewhat because of the way they can't just sell all these cards in auctions. They need some secondary transactions to probably knock around, and maybe some other stuff to happen. It's hard to see or tell. So I think that has an impact as well, because like the market is an ecosystem, and I can't really say how the direct impact or the direct correlation is, but like, yeah, it's an ecosystem. All this stuff, the market, reward cycles, what they're paying out on how many people hit freshies, you know, DNP. And on this kind of little flavor, and I'll pass it back to you, Stish, is like we've said a lot on, I think, every bit of content I've been doing, especially here. But since the Qatar World Cup, it's like the injuries are mental. DNPs happen all the time to all sorts of people, foreseen and unforeseen, and everything else in between now. So I think all these things kind of cycle around. You know, the little opportunities that come into the market.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it just had me having a look there. You were talking to the market. I always kind of look at the expensive cards, as most people do, but I'm not talking like the uniques. I think that unique value goes up and down based on the kind of overall market tends to be the case, right? Or the offering. And I think that when they introduced thresholds for unique, super rare, all that kind of thing, definitely gave things a boost. But I think if anywhere's suffering a bit at the moment, it is the rare market. I think there is a lot of value to be had there. As long as those thresholds stay in place, I think the threshold reward keeps a lot of people playing. So yeah, fingers crossed that stays sustainable based on the kind of current levels and whatnot. Be interesting to see if that can continue. Just having a look at, so like Mbappe, for example, just to see in sort of like pounds. And I noticed that there is an Mbappe on the market now for it might be is that the floor? Let me have a look. Cards rare for sale. Lowest price. Let's go. So you can get an Mbappe on the market right now for 1.6982 ETH. Just that, you know, that is £3,000 still. So it's not a million miles away from some of the prices we've seen recently for him. But it is, there is like a bit of a mental thing, isn't there? Seeing things go down in ETH, because I think as much as we've all gotten used to sort of valuing things in pounds, the minutes that those ETH numbers start to drop, it just does something, doesn't it? You're like, oh, even though it's the same amount of money, there's definitely like, it's very strange. But I'm looking now at that price and I'm like, wow, that's a huge drop. But then when you look at it in pounds, the drop isn't actually that catastrophic. We're talking about 15%, something like that, which, you know, it's pretty standard this sort of time of the season. Well, maybe a little bit more than standard, especially for a card of Mbappe where we haven't got the supply. So when a card like that's going down, maybe we should sort of like pay attention a little bit more. But yeah, just catching myself there looking at his ETH price and like having a panic almost. But when you put it in pounds, it's not quite as dramatic as it feels initially.
I was going to say to you, where did I hear recently, or maybe anyone in the chat can help me, but I heard people talking about like thresholds, and like you've brought them up there, that they might be off the table, like going forward, like next season or something like that. I heard someone kind of.
I've not heard anything like from anywhere. I can't imagine it. Yeah, no one I've spoken to or anyone has said like, oh, there's a whisper going around. Or I think that naturally when we get market dips, that's almost the first question that comes up, or like the theory is, you know, people will look at thresholds and think that is like surely one of the biggest outlays for them, apart from buying licenses on the platform, giving away money. You know, giving away more cards doesn't necessarily cost them money, but it costs them maybe like potential or something like that, earning potential. I don't know. I'm not a mathematician or an accountant, but I think like, so people like me as well will probably have a similar. They look at thresholds and be like, how much longer can they afford that? While if the prices are going down, you know, were those threshold sort of calculations made based on the price of this card sort of staying the same as we got to this point in the season or not? But
I think they would have had to have made any forecasts, because we remember how surprised we were that we got super rare and unique thresholds for a start. Like, even that they came, an unlimited one, that was like, wow. So I think for them to introduce that, knowing how like detrimental it would be to then subsequently remove it further down the road, they would have to have been super conservative forecasting sustainability against it, surely, is the way I think of it. So I can't remember where it was, but it was in the back of my mind. And then when you brought it up there, it kind of brought it to the forth, and I thought I would just mention it and just give my 2 cents.
Well, I think as well, it was something we were talking about in our chat with Tony as well, because Tony's obviously moved into playing unique tournaments quite a bit of late, and we were discussing the move. Like we spoke on the podcast last week about why would they do the change where like they add the scarcity, blah blah blah. So the more I thought about that, if you missed it last week, we were basically saying super rare and unique scarcity bonuses are going to be added. So instead of it being 280 points, it's going to be like 330 for super rare, and for unique it'll be something else like 400 and something probably, right? And I think this, now more I've thought about it, the sole reason that makes sense for me, at least for me, and this might make sense for other people, is in doing that, it gives a bit of a handicap to anyone that plays the unique version of thresholds that has a super rare. It makes it much harder to reach that score if you're losing 20-30% on one of your cards, which is what will happen now, and it wasn't happening before. They were just flattening out everything was 280, but now we're getting that scarcity bonus included. It means that if you're playing cap 240 in unique, but you're using a super rare, where a unique card might have a 50% bonus, your super rare's only got a 20-30% bonus. It's going to make it a lot harder to hit that cap unless your super rare is massively outperforming their cap. So
I do agree that these moves are probably to make it harder. See, one thing I was thinking there as you were talking, Stish, is like, so the unique threshold, right? See, if 10 people miss it, say that's $5,000. That's 1,000 limited thresholds that are then easier to pay out, isn't it? I guess so. That's I never thought about it in that context that you've said it.
Because it seems like it should. It will definitely save them a few. Be interesting to see the actual stats on it, but in my opinion, that should knock quite a few of the cap 240 unique threshold payouts out of the equation for them, which, like you said, might be a little bit of a lifeline, might allow them to carry on for a bit. But I say for a bit, you'd like to hope that this is here to stay, right? There's not been any whispers or any talk of it not happening. This is just, I think, us in the community theorizing, like, when things go down, what is going to happen? How are they going to steady the ship? And if they took the cash rewards out, I think that would obviously be potentially catastrophic for the price of cards anyway, because I think you need the cash rewards in there, because if just winning cards, if the cards aren't worth anything, then who wants to win the cards? I think it's weird, isn't it? Because it's a different offering to, say, like FPL, where you can play that for free and win nothing, but you're engaged. But the fact that you kind of pay your way into this game is because you like the idea of winning something a bit tangible. And it's one thing to win. I don't know. I think that, like, maybe psychologically as well, I feel like, getting to those cash rewards is a lot more. I feel like more realistic winning that than winning tickets to the game or winning a shirt. Even though technically they could give 100 tickets away, 100 shirts away every week in every division or whatever, but there's something about being able to see and know what score I need to hit that feels obtainable versus trying to win a division every week. Do you know what I mean? But it's not like we always had the threshold there. That was something that was introduced. I'm trying to think now, when I first started, was there a threshold reward, or was that something that was introduced a bit later on? Can you remember when they introduced rare threshold?
It was always so rare threshold came. I started in game week 72. So I want to say threshold came into, that was like the June of 2020. I think they came in around the December of that year. So I'm going to guess at like game week 90 or 100 or something like that. So a fair length of time. We're at game week 440 odd or something now. So over 3/4 to 80% of the time of the game weeks have been running. And the threshold initially started, for anyone that wants a wee history lesson, it was £7 and £3.50 worth of Ethereum, which was 0.02 and 0.01 respectively. So came a long way, and it's had a lot of iterations over the time.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't had too many changes apart from when they introduced thresholds for limited and super rare and unique. And then this is the only other change I feel like they really made since they introduced it. So maybe that's why the community is like, oh, why are they messing about with thresholds all of a sudden? And maybe that's what has got us all talking about it. I don't know. I've definitely not heard any whispers from anyone to suggest that they've heard.
I can't remember where it was. It might have. I can't remember where it was. I'm sure I heard somebody say it might have been in a group chat or something. I thought it was a video, perhaps, or maybe even us last week. But just the potential for it to be, on the drawing board again is
something that might get mark.
Yeah.
Interesting chat. Anyway, let's switch it up a bit, Quinny. We were going to say, obviously, last week we looked back at our previous year. We talked about some of the cards that had been our heroes for their club, for our clubs this season. Let's try and figure out, if we're talking about stacking or if we're talking about individual players, are there any players or teams in particular that you think we will see a big improvement from in 2024? Are there any clubs that you've got your eye on? Anyone that you potentially be looking at for a bit of stacking for an improvement on this season?
It's hard. It's a hard one to think. We were talking about this before coming on, and it's normally the kind of thing that inspires me to think this way about a team is like a spate of transfers or a managerial change. And right now, there's not really anything in the offing that I would be especially excited about. It's not kind of ready. Got people interested in already. Like Leverkusen look hot if they can keep Xabi Alonso and Wirtz beyond this season, which sounds like could be possible. Like Girona, Villa, there's lots of little clubs going around there. But from a Sorare perspective, I would probably say on this kind of vein, this kind of sentiment, what we're kind of driving at in this part of the show is like one thing that I've really enjoyed this season on Sorare or this calendar year has been the development of the collection game. I grabbed the shirt out when you mentioned what prizes you can win and stuff like that. And like my Girona collection, my Leipzig collection, and to a lesser extent, pretty much every other one I've got are all starting to kind of kick up and work for me off the back of transfers and things like that. And I think from a Sorare perspective, a lot of the collection bonus and a lot of the stacking kind of tactics and strategies that came out over this year are mainly centered around that. Obviously, there's always if you're back in the team and then the backup striker moves to somewhere else and becomes a first team striker, then all of a sudden you're kind of the collection is moving you on. I think that part of it's always been in the makeup. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, like when I've done, I've not finished the Girona collection yet, but when I was going out and buying that, or when I've been going out and building that, it was always with the view of they're always, all these guys will leave Girona. They'll all play for different clubs. Some of them are on loan. Some of them are too good. Some of them aren't good enough. Maybe move down, that kind of thing. And over like the month of December, I've had like those offers that you get out the blue for someone. And you're like, why are you sending me an offer for this guy? You do the Twitter search and, I've got two of them transferring in January. One's going on loan to Division 2. One's going to Colombia or something like that. So it should be OP when he goes over there.
Nice.
And I think that strategy will be probably the next thing. Because I see a lot of people in the chat that, like Connor's mentioned his Fulham team. I see Sorare Josh, Ian, JC. Like these guys are all big collectors of different clubs. And it's clubs that they support. They know the squad. They can predict the 11. They've got the side pieces to cover for suspensions and stuff. But what I think will probably come into main galleries probably over this year more is that club number 2 where you like them, you like the appeal of getting, like I mentioned the Zachariah and Kubo thing. That's like a little 2-card trick to 2% because I've got a reward and then a jersey number, which is quite cool when that happens. But the Danny P that I just picked up, for example, if anyone's ever on my club on Sorare, just search for Quinny or FC Barcelona. You'll see the Valencia collection is quite high up. I actually can't see it right now. There we go. And like every card that I've got in that is a midfielder, basically. One of them's a forward, but I've got like 6 cards there. 5 of them are midfielders. They all play for different teams, and I've bought them all over the last 4 years individually, just because of different reasons, if you know what I mean. And like looking at a team and going, oh wow, like they've got 8 midfielders that are decent. Like I could still get Kang and Lee into that picture as well. I don't have him. He's a midfielder that's kind of decent, overpriced at the moment. But I do think that it's probably the club. If whoever that club is for you, it might be like a PSV or a Feyenoord or something like that when they disband their players. But it might even be someone that's a little bit smaller than that. Like Girona is the apex example now, because they've got a lot of players on loan. They've got a lot of players in the City Football Group, so it's easy to imagine these players get dispersed far and wide. But even River, there's other clubs that do this kind of thing often enough, and I think that's a little bit of the play, because all the changes we're talking about, like collection bonus is really valuable, and it's about where can you get it, who do you get it for, and how can you maximize it as much as possible. And I think like doing it for a club is obviously the step one, or the starting block for all this stuff. But then I think the high level strategy stuff that will keep people high on leaderboards is having that guy like Nkunku that I've picked up, who's on 3% once my guys all age in. I needed a midfielder, and I can pick him up, and he just plugs in because by coincidence I already have a couple of guys that add into that, and I can now have a 3% collection bonus midfielder, which is basically the top percent. There's very few that will be on 4s and 5s, at rare and above. And that kind of flexibility, I think, is probably what we'll see more of in the coming year.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think I'm probably one of the guys who doesn't have much of a lot of collection bonus goes on, but like you mentioned there, like having the card win and then picking up one off auction, whatever. So obviously I won a Donnarumma and Mbappe last year, and my 2 cards there have got nice. So I think Verratti is probably the only other card I've bought for that collection bonus to try and like bring it in a little bit. But yeah, I think in terms of teams and like where I might look to pick cards up or players, obviously we've all seen how well like Leverkusen have done in Germany. I don't know how many of us would have foreseen that for this season necessarily. They always look good, but I think the consistency is finally there. It is difficult, isn't it? But I think like for me, I think I might be looking more at teams like who finishes 3rd from bottom in the Premier League is like who I'm trying to think of now. Like who goes into the Championship strong next season? Or is there a team in the Championship that's got cards, like does Leicester
go up?
Does Leicester not go up? Or,
Southampton.
I think that's where the potential value is to be had, is like who are the strong. And I think like La Liga 2 is another good one as well, because there's a lot of fixtures in that league. They don't miss many international break. La Liga 2 normally goes on still as well. So clubs that are going to be strong in the second tier of Spanish football, particularly, I think that is going to be my playbook between now and the end of the season, or as early as possible. You don't want to be doing it right at the end of the season because the prices will go. But if you can have a little look at the league tables now and try and have a think about who do you think's going down or staying down, who's unlikely to leave, or who are the youth prospects if they're going down that are going to stay and like become starters, that kind of thing. Especially for U23, it's in those midweeks, in those international breaks. If you've got, if you've got U23 players who go to international, sometimes it's almost a coin toss whether or not they're even going to get minutes. But if they're staying at their like club level, and they're going to start, those players are such good cards to have if you play U23. So I'll be keeping a keen eye. I can't pick out exactly what I think will happen. I think in the Premier League, it's for me, I think maybe Burnley, if Burnley might be that club that go down, but will probably be good enough to potentially come back up again the following season. So be keeping a keen eye.
You kind of want them to keep company, don't you? If they get that same season they had last year. They did that with Dyche. They kept the manager. So they keep him. Maybe that's why Company's super calm all season. He knows I'll get relegated and come back again. Maybe
But
He
yeah,
is really calm for a guy that's doing terribly crap.
yeah, they're not doing great. But like, I look at the squad as well, and you think, how many of those players would they lose if they got relegated? And I don't think they'd lose a lot of them, to be honest. Like, they haven't got any of those like
Muric.
massive stars on. Yeah, I mean, they'll want to cut some of the wage bills down, but they can't have many players there that have like relegation clauses or any players they need to cut off the wage bill if they go into the championship. I don't think they've got any of those like real troublesome on the books players. So if they were to go down, I'd fancy them to have a good chance at coming back up again. They were good in the championship last season, weren't they? So I mean, like, I had a few cards from them last year. Muric, obviously, Muric was good, but I think Muric will leave maybe even in January. To be honest, I think there must be a few clubs looking at him. International goal. He's too good to sit on the bench. I think Trafford's had a good few games recently. He seems to have finally kind of found his feet, and they look like going to stick with him anyway. So I think Muric might even leave in January. I've still got my Muric card. Be waiting to see what happens with him. But yeah, if he hasn't left in Jan, I'd expect him to be gone regardless of what happens at the end of the season. Maybe a move for him. He's one of those players you could kind of see in any division. I'm surprised that he didn't retain the number 1 shirt there in the Premier League, to be honest. Even when they signed Trafford, I was like, not sure if Trafford's there to be bought as like the successor to him or something like that. But yeah, I think Burnley maybe the next year, be keeping an eye on them, especially if they finish in the relegation positions. They'll be a good side, I think, to pick up. And what about players? Any players you think like might make that breakthrough next season? I know you got Ben Doak. He'll be interesting to see if he gets a loan deal. Could be a really nice card if he does. So he might be worth a little mention. But anyone?
Another one I picked up just before Christmas was I seen Quique Sanchez Flores became the Sevilla manager, and I was reading into that and all the rest of it. And basically, I went and got myself a Joan Jordan super rare, which was cheap as buttons. I'd done a trade for it. With like a DNP super rare that I won a couple of quid, and Goretzka rare, who's down in value, and like that position in Bayern. I'm happy to keep the super rare, obviously, but the rare, thought I'd get a bit of value into that, turn it into a JJ. Anyway, I think he could be pretty good next year. I know it's not probably too exciting for many people, but again, on that same kind of vein of like, I really like, as you look more and more at my gallery, like I really do enjoy La Liga. I think there's lots of good talent in La Liga, and I think a lot of the good players that emerge can be found really cheap if you can watch the games. And I just mean access, because overall La Liga is pretty entertaining if you watch the right games and whatever. And I think that probably might be surprising to some people because it's a champion league. It's probably, it's top 3, isn't it? It's definitely, up for debate between it and the Bundesliga. You would probably say, but again, I think, I like Joan Jordan. Hopefully Sevilla kind of kick on. They're out of Europe altogether, which is the first time probably in modern history that's happened. And the manager likes him. He used to play him all the time. It's Espanyol, and kind of brought him through and stuff like that. So I'm kind of hope that one works out a little bit better. And obviously, again, bit of recency bias. But Dan Juma, if he goes back to Villarreal, maybe he could be pretty good. So I'm kind of looking at the guys that are, unfortunately for anyone listening directly in my gallery, so the ones that just kind of spring to mind. Enes Ünal as well, probably another one I would kind of mention just at this point in the show, but he was like in the match day squad for the last game before the winter break there. I don't know if he actually made the bench, but he was in the travelling party, and he's like been training. The doctors have been forcing him not to kick the ball and stuff like that. So he'll be a DNP striker when he first comes back, and he's a guy that gets 10 to 15 goals a season, and he's got a lot of lost time to make up for. And Getafe are pretty handy now. They're about to sign. Getafe might be, see on that Girona vibe I was talking about before. Getafe might be a great shout for this because they are also trying to sign at the moment, and I think they will get him, Iliax Moriba, former Barcelona guy that's at Leipzig. The manager at Getafe signed him for Valencia. He was okay at Valencia, so he knows him. They've got a relationship. I think that deal will go through. They've got Greenwood already. Borja Mayoral's in great form, and he might even get a really interesting transfer somewhere exciting. Enes Ünal we've mentioned already. And there's another couple, the goalkeeper I'm in love with, obviously. I think he's fantastic. And there's a few other players that are kind of, they have a bit of a profile around them if you want to go scratching around looking. But yeah, big Enes Ünal. He'll be cheap as chips over 23, Getafe, DNP, injured striker. I'd be surprised if you couldn't
Yeah,
get a wee cheeky rare or a limited or something like that. And I say he's a guy that forwards are a real problem now on Sorare. Like, it's really hard getting a goal scorer, I think, consistently. So trying to find a guy that will catch fire second half of the season should be top of a lot of agendas. I've went with Fekir. I've got Unal already, obviously. But yeah, that's just the things that spring to my mind.
Yeah, I'm just having a look at something that's come through the chat as well, actually, which is quite an interesting point that kind of speaks to what we're talking about as well. But Aspel 1994 says, who are you guys backing for a deep run in Europe? Champion Europe clubs in the Europa or Conference League can be cheat codes in the second half of the season. It's a good point, and you got me looking at the fixtures for the next round of games in the Conference League just to see like who's left, who they've got. I think Ajax have finally like found their mojo, haven't they, this season? They started absolutely awfully, but the last few weeks they've kicked on and they seem to have found their shape, their identity back a little bit. And they've got Bodo Glimt in the Conference League. Looking at some of the other teams there, for me, Eintracht Frankfurt and Betis are probably the other two strong teams left in the Conference League, so it might be worth keeping an eye on them. That'll be interesting. Sturm Graz have been pretty good this season. They might be worth a watch. And then if we go into the Europa League, let's have a little look at what's left there with the teams that have moved into that competition. Galatasaray play Sparta Prague. I think they could go well. Feyenoord have Roma. That'll be a good fixture. That.
Oh yeah. They seem to play each other every year in one of these competitions.
There's some really good fixtures in the Europa League. It's going to be hard to call that one, I think, a little bit harder. Like all the teams left in that are actually pretty decent. If you look at, Galatasaray, Sparta Prague, Feyenoord, Roma, AC Milan, Rennes, Benfica, Toulouse, Shakhtar, Marseille, Young Boys, Sporting, Braga, Qarabag, Lens, and Freiburg. There's a lot of good teams there. So
there's some teams as well that probably, if you're just looking at the round of fixtures, you won't see because the teams that finish top of their groups don't play a game.
Right. Yeah.
So all the top seeds from the Conference League groups and the Europa League groups, they get a bit of a bye. So we'll see kind of who shakes out.
That's a good point, yeah. But I mean, just those teams alone.
I fancy Betis moving down to the Conference League. I see a Villa still in there. And I don't know. I think Inter Milan will be pretty handy in the Champions League as well. Inter Milan are still Champions League, aren't they? Yeah. Inter Milan. Yeah. Aye, them and Sociedad. Sociedad probably won't go too far. The draws were all pretty favourable, I think, in the Champions League. But I think as far as Sorare goes, you don't really look at Champions League for deep runs for your cards or anything. You're definitely after the Villas and the Betises or whatever.
Absolutely. I would agree with that. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that all plays out. So the next round of fixtures are not until February. We've got a little while yet. But yeah, it feels like ages. I know we've only had like a kind of week and a bit of like this kind of lightweight fixture list. But I'm looking at my sort of team builder for the next few weeks, and it is light. Like some weeks I don't think I've got anything out. At best I've got a 4-player cap 240 out for the next week or two. But Quinny, have you got anything lined up? I know there's quite a lot of Scottish fixtures. You've got a nice little selection or two there. Probably a good opportunity, I think, for managers like yourself who do have that collection based in a league like Scotland or the Premier League, where you've got that nice busy fixture period through the festive season. I think this is your time to shine, isn't it, and try and reap the benefits of that gallery.
We've hit rewards 2 weeks in the bounce. So this weekend it's Celtic at home to Rangers in the Derby. So this is one where those decisions I was talking about before, where I tried to play my Sorare head and like pick the right team and whatever, and I didn't do it. This week I'm faced with the same conundrum. Cunha's on fire. Cunha's on form. He's at home at Everton, which won't be a great game, but by all accounts he should be starting in my best team over Kyogo and over Dyson. But I can't play Cunha over them. I just can't do it. So I'll have a couple of teams out in Super and in Rare, which will be good fun. And I say hopefully I can kind of make the most of it. But it is all down to that Derby match. We need the result. I've got cards in all my teams, so if we don't get the result, I'm screwed, sort of thing. So It's one of those ones,
Yeah, I think I had a brief look at it, and I think there was a potential cap 240 rare with a DMP goalkeeper, and I think similarly in limited I might only manage a 220. So it's going to be a quiet few weeks for me. I'm going to be craving some end product come like the middle of Jan when things start to open up again. Just looking forward to having one of those weekends where you've got an abundance of options. Like you always used to, what did you used to call it, that weekend where all the leagues came back? I remember your content used to talk about when the European leagues reopen after all we've had, the summer, that first sort of middle of August when we've got all of the leagues back.
I
And
can't
it's this like
remember
Super Sunday almost, isn't
exactly, but I remember, I know what you're talking about, I need to check, but the word that springs to my mind is convergence, but I don't know if that was the word, but I know exactly what you're talking about. But it's like that eye of the vortex. It's like where everything comes together and it's like everything's firing again. Yeah, definitely. That'll be like end of January, beginning of Feb by the time we get that back again in our life.
Once we get America and Asia back in again, it'll feel almost similar to that again, won't it? It's got to be, I think, but it'll be early March by the time all of them are back, and then you've got winter break back for Russia and Switzerland and Austria. They have a break as well, don't they? Then the Scandinavian leagues, they break even further than that, don't they? If I remember rightly, they don't come back they have a little break till almost April, I think, don't they? I think in some of those Scandinavian, Danish or Swedish leagues, I can't remember what ones, but don't really have many cards from there myself, so it's never really affected me personally. But yeah, just looking forward to getting the festive seasons out of the way now. Let's get New Year's Eve out of the way, and let's get some football fixtures back on the calendar, a bit lively. Hopefully some players returning from injuries, that extra layoff they've had, and hopefully they come good. I'll definitely be looking forward to a few of my long-term injuries coming back. You already mentioned Fekir. He kind of showed us he was back, didn't he? And then he's picked up like a thigh strain or something, hasn't he? I think he's out till after the winter break, like January or whatever. But it'd be interesting to see him coming back. And for me, it's like Diviv. I need Diviv back. I think by the time he comes, I don't think he's U23 anymore. Yeah, I feel like I haven't used him in a lineup for so long. But I'll be looking forward to being able to do that again. Hopefully in the not too distant future. But Quinny, I think we've covered a lot this week, considering we thought, this is gonna be a quiet one, not a lot's going on.
Yeah, we kind of went everywhere, didn't we?
We've been talking till the cows come home today, so mate, it's been a pleasure catching up with you. I've got to take my son off to some football thing this afternoon, so we're getting back to some level of normality again today. It's a bit of midweek football action. But to everyone in the chat, thank you so much for your interaction. And we had a really good busy chat in there today. If you've enjoyed this, please give it a like, subscribe, share, follow, all of that good stuff. Make sure you watch it back on Quinny's YouTube channel, Quinny 3001, or if you're listening podcast, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you listen to your podcast, give us a search, M Product So Rare, you'll find us. Quinny and everyone, have a great and very happy New Year, and we'll be back.
Happy New Year to you, mate.
For the first episode of 2024, same time next week.
That's it. With some more end product as well. Let's get it.
Absolutely. Cheers, everyone.